Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Adroit Journal's 51st issue release reading. My name's Sara Afshar. I'm going to be hosting our reading tonight. We have a lot of great poets and writers waiting to read their work. But first, I just want to thank everyone for coming, for choosing to spend tonight listening to art, reading art, and thank you so much to the Adroit staff for putting the issue together. So yeah, without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our first reader. We're so honored to have tonight Mary Jo Bang. Mary Jo Bang is the author of 9 books of poems, including A Film in Which I Play Everyone, which was nominated for a Lambada Literary Award, A Doll for Throwing, and Elegy, which received the National Book Critics Circle Award. She has published translations of Dante's Inferno, illustrated by Henrik Drescher, and Purgatorio. Her translation of Paradiso is forthcoming from Grey Wolf Press in 2025. She is also the translator of Colonies of Paradise, poems by Matthias Gortz, and co-translator with Yuki Tanaka of A Kiss for Absolute, selected poems of Shuzo Takiguchi, forthcoming from Princeton University Press in November 2024. She is a professor of English at Washington University in St. Louis. Join me in welcoming Mary Jo Bang.
Lost my microphone. Okay, now I'm here. Thank you to everyone at Adroit Journal for publishing my translation of 2 cantos of Dante's Paradiso. They're the 2 last cantos, and so tonight I'm going to read the final canto of the Paradiso, which of course is the final canto of the Divine Comedy, Canto 33. Virgin Mother, daughter of your Son, more humble and higher than every creature, fixed ending of eternal forethought, you are the one who so ennobled human nature that its maker didn't disdain to make himself his own made thing. Within your womb was reignited the flame of love, in the heat of which this flower was able to germinate in an eternal peace. To us up here, you're the noonday sun of love, and down below, among mortals, you're an inexhaustible wellspring of hope. Lady, you are so great and so powerful that whoever wants grace and doesn't turn to you, their desire wants to fly without wings. Your loving kindness not only gives comfort to those who ask, but often expansively anticipates the asking. In you, mercy, in you, pity, in you, lavish generosity, in you is gathered together whatever is good in any creature. Now this one, from the bottommost pit of the universe, all the way up to here, has seen the disembodied spirits, one after another. He beseeches you by your grace for as much power as will enable him to lift himself even higher with his eyes toward the ultimate salvation. I should have said, this is St. Bernard addressing Mary. And I, who never burned more for my own vision than I do for his, I offer you all my prayers and pray that they don't fall short, that you would uncouple every cloud of his mortality from him with your prayers, so that the highest beauty may be disclosed to him. More, I beg you, Queen of Heaven, you who can do whatever you wish, may he keep his affections pure after having seen so much. May your oversight control his human passions. Look at Beatrice with so many other blessed, clasping their hands for my prayers to you. Those eyes, beloved and revered by God, fixed on the one who prayed, showed us how welcome devout prayers are to her. They then turned straight to the eternal light, into which no eye, don't ever believe otherwise, of any being can penetrate with so much clarity. And while I was nearing the end of all desiring, as I had to. Within me, the heat of my desire reached its limit. Bernard smiled and gestured to me to look upward, although I was already on my own, doing what he wanted. Because my sight, becoming purified, was entering more and more into the beam of the brightest light that is, in itself, true. From then on, my vision was greater than words can express. It bows out at such a sight, then memory bows out at the over-the-topness. Like someone who sees in a dream, and after the dream, an imprint of the feeling remains, but the rest can't be brought back to mind. That's me exactly, since my vision almost totally breaks off, and yet, distilled in my heart, is the sweetness that was born of it. So in the snow, unsealed in the sun, so in the wind that lifts the featherweight leaves, was the Sibyl's prophecy lost. O supreme light, elevated so far above human comprehension, bring back to my memory a little of how you appeared, and make my language so powerful that it might leave just one single spark of your glory to future generations. Since by returning somewhat to my memory and echoing a little in these verses, your victory will be better conceived. I believe that because of the brilliance of the bright ray I submitted to, I would have been lost if I'd turned my eyes from it. I'm reminded that it was because of that I gained more courage to hold on until I came eye to eye with infinite worth. O abundant grace, by which I presumed to fix my eyes so intently on the eternal light that I exhausted all my sight there. I saw within its triune depths, lovingly bound in one volume, the fascicles that are scattered throughout the universe, substances and accidents and their interactions, almost as if fused together in such a way that what I'm describing is pure, undivided light. I do believe that I perceived the universal form of this bond because just saying this, I feel a greater sense of intense joy. That single instant is more a blank to me than the 25 centuries since the feat that made Neptune marvel at the shadow of the Argo. Just so, my mind in total suspense was staring, fixed, motionless, and intent, set ever more on fire by the continuous looking. The way one becomes in that light, it's impossible that they'd ever consent to turn themselves from that to any other sight. For the good, which is the object of the will, is all contained in it, and whatever is perfect in there is defective outside it. Now my speech, even about what I do remember, will be more at a loss than a baby whose tongue is still wet from the breast. Not because there was more than one simple semblance in that living light I was staring at. It always is, as it was before. But as my looking was making my sight stronger, that single semblance, as I was being changed, was transforming itself to me. The profound and clear essence of that sublime light appeared to me as three circles of three colors and of one magnitude. One circle seemed to be reflected by the other, like rainbow by rainbow, and the third seemed like fire, breathed out equally by both. Oh, how limited speech is, how listless compared to what I conceived, and that to what I saw. It's not enough to even say it's a little. O eternal light, you who alone exist within yourself, who alone know yourself and self-known and knowing, love and smile on yourself. That circling, which, as I conceived it, appeared in you as reflected light, after my eyes had studied it for some time, seemed to me, within itself, in its own color, to be painted with our human image, so that my sight was totally immersed in it. Like the geometer who gives their all to squaring the circle and still can't uncover, through reasoning, the principle they need. That's how I was at that new sight, wanting to see how the image fit the circle and how it inwears itself there. But my own wings weren't up to that, had it not been that my mind was suddenly struck by a bolt from the blue, and I got my wish. At that, the plug was pulled on my lofty fantasy, but my desire and will were already being turned, just like the wheel that is equally moved by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. That's it.
Beautiful.
Wow, thank you. I know silence can be kind of awkward, but I feel like after a reading like that, you need a minute. Thank you so much for sharing, Mary Jo. Our next reader is Ademola Adefolami. Ademola is a storyteller, curator, and teacher. His works have been published in Anathema Magazine, New York Literary Magazine, New Orleans Review, Olongo Africa, and elsewhere. His writing explores the nexus between migration, identity, and the fragile phenomenon of becoming in places devoid of the warmth of home. Largely, he is interested in stories that grow larger than the tiny cubicles where they unfold. Let's please welcome Ademola.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? All right, so my name is Ademola, and I'm so happy to be here. It took a while to find something to read, but I'm just going to read one or two short experimental pieces there, as a response. First one I'm going to read, but I'm not sure how much time I have, so it might just be one that I get to do. So this is titled something, because I'm writing pretty much against my collection of essays in progress, which is the titular essay that's published in this issue, right? So just writing a couple of similar essays, really. So yeah. All right, it is titled Outsider Inside, Insider Outside, on America's Default Whiteness. So it's short, right? One irrefutable truth about being a fully funded international read African student in and at the mercy of any one of America's predominantly white universities is the enabling side choosing at the core of the decisions that students make. For many, this might not be as noticeable, but for writers, it is without doubt apparent in the stories we tell, how we tell them, and the foundational relevance of what we say. In essence, you have to decide if you want to really tell the truth about what currently obtains in the world, which almost always incriminates these institutions, or tell a resized version of the truth that pretends to break class ceilings, but only at the core is a pretentious reiteration of the age-long white American concept of pacifism, or truth be told, neutrality and indifference. It is the first thing you notice about America, loud, self-righteous neutrality. The reason for this is simple enough. For anyone who is often bored enough to understand and observe mannerisms, America's default is whiteness. It is the fabric of the country's national identity. While there is no denying that this whitewashing of history was born as a center whiteness, having stolen the land from the state, centuries of ironing this propaganda into the fabric of history as sure pillar for white supremacists. It is why, for instance, Jake, a classmate in one of my nonfiction classes, like many other Americans, thinks that people canceling Israel and supporting Palestine are picked sides and shouldn't have done that because there are people dying on both sides. It is why Zadie Smith, in her essay in the New Yorker, professes mediation and an understanding of the harsh realities of both sides. The one denominating factor between Jake and Zadie is that they are both white, and by default, oblivious to, or intentionally allergic to the vain pomposity of their self-righteous indifference? Or could it be ignorant? I taught a writing class that explores gender, social class, and race for 4 semesters in a white college with mostly white students. I want to believe that the reason for this nearly ubiquitous neutrality is solely hinged on ignorance. 2 out of the 4 modules into which my course is divided explore, or at least pretend to explore, racial conversations. The essays written by the students are almost always racist and borderline disrespectful to minority races. For context, the state of Kansas is one of the states that loudly championed the banning of critical race theory. As such, I am consistently stunned by the irony of banning a course that could provide more comprehensive nuance to racism, but burdening a graduate student with trying to teach students how to introspectively interact with racism in 4 weeks. Do you blame the students for being willfully ignorant, or do you blame the government for sustaining this ignorance? Or is this a problem with the home? The interesting thing about the American pacifism, however, is that it has a limit. It bears its ugly fang when whiteness is not the recipient of violence. Largely, there is the casual normalization of violence against the Black body, so that Americans, even Black people, are used to such sights. But once the race of the oppressed changes, reactions are imminent, opinions become rampant, and the cloak of indifference is cast aside for the armor of cold, plain defense. When Russia encroached on Ukraine, the world knew it was a case of an oppressor versus an oppressed. In fact, many Americans were vocal in their global name-calling of Vladimir Putin and Russia's use of aggression. There were no 2 sides of both parties. When the United States bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people celebrated. Even many global observers swallowed their criticism and allowed it because everyone understood what it meant to be attacked first. There were no 2 sides, and if history has done anything, it has reminded us over time that nothing radicalizes white people faster than witnessing violence against other white people. It does not matter if the violence they witnessed was a reaction to an existing violence started by white people. There is always a call for ostracization and destruction of the supposed erring party. It is the same we have seen since October 7th. It has been the same react response that white people have used in their limping defense of Israel's violence on Palestine. There is no recourse whatsoever to the 75 years of repeated and sustained violence on Palestine by Israel, supported by the billions from the United States and the United Kingdom. In my second year master's creative nonfiction class, a colleague of mine, let's call him Paul, had, without being prompted, continuously reminded the class about his disappointment at the loss of lives to both sides. In his defense, the war, especially the accompanying violence, is ridiculous and unnecessary. However, the war in question is the encroachment of Israel on Palestine land for the last 75 years. Thank you. That's that. Do I have any more time?
I was not keeping track. Did anyone look at a clock before that reading started? Because we can do the math. No, I'm guessing probably we have to move on. Heidi, if that's wrong, let me know. Okay,
Oh,
we'll move on. But thank you so much for sharing that necessary essay. And we'll move on to our next reader now. I'm still I'm not the best host. I'm still thinking about the past readings, and we have to move on to the next ones. They've been so good. But no, we will move on to Vivian. We'll move on to Vivian DeRosa, who is a writer from New Jersey, pursuing her MA in History and Museum Studies at Tufts University. Previously, she's been honored as a Presidential Scholar in the Arts, an Aspen Words Emerging Writer, and a Lambda Literary Fellow. Currently, she's working on a novel. Please join me in welcoming Vivian.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and so excited. I'll be reading an excerpt of my piece that is in this issue, which is titled Horse Girls. This was a summer with teeth, the sort of summer where you have to hold your hands flat or else June will bite your fingers off. We wore spaghetti straps. We left sweat stains when we straddled the saddle. We were 14. We closed the tackroom door, held our arms out in front of the oscillating fan, and we aired our pits out. We aired our grievances out. That freaking Palomino who's hogging the outdoor ring, also our mother's self-explanatory, and the barn owner, who had yet to arrive, even though we were waiting for him and the new horse all morning. Humidity heavy on our shoulders like a shrug. Half chaps pulled up to our knees, knees pulled up to our chests. Mosquito wings crushed under our boots. This was the first day of our 7th summer together, and we had absolutely nothing to do until Jessica said she wanted to pierce her ear with a horseshoe nail. We didn't ask if she was joking. Jessica was as sharp as her name, hissing S, biting C. The walls around us were covered with bridles and bits. These days, we were always biting down. We bit our tongues. We bit the insides of our cheeks until they turned white rubber. Don't you think you'll need something sharper? Courtney asked. Like what? Jessica lay on her stomach, stretched across her tack box. We pretended to think it over. We all knew Em had a sewing kit in her bag. The edges of her saddle blanket would fray, or there'd be holes in Lancelot's winter coat. All of her stuff was secondhand. Are you sure you don't want to go to Claire's? Em asked. Jessica smiled. Em handed her the needle. Let us help you. We went to the barn bathroom, windowless and wood-paneled, with another whistling fan. In front of the blurry mirror, Jessica brushed her hair back to reveal our target. We leaned in, wiped down the needle, then the ear. This wasn't the first time we'd done this. We'd never pierced an ear, but we'd disinfected Em's nose ring, and we'd cut Courtney's bangs, and we'd tweezed Jessica's eyebrows, each of us plucking hairs until they were narrow, uniform. What we mean to say is, this is hardly the first time we've moved as one. We pointed the needle and aimed for flesh. As we broke the skin, we could hear the barn owner's trailer pull into the gravel driveway. He was here, and so was the new arrival. Our hands shook, even before we met him, even before we knew this horse was unruly and irresistible, snarling and stark white like molars, even before we realized there was a drop of blood on Jessica's cheek from the piercing. We knew. This was going to break skin. This was going to leave a hole. Jessica's new horse took his first step into Cantor Hill's stables by slamming one hoof onto the barn owner's foot. We should have gotten ice, pounding our fists on the machine in the tack room until it stubbornly spat out a few cubes, wrapped them in a paper towel, and brought it to the barn owner. We should have asked if he was okay. We should have taken a step back, probably, from the horse nearly foaming at the mouth. We shouldn't have stepped closer, and closer, and closer. Don't crowd, the barn owner said, still wincing. We're not crowding. Girls. The barn owner was lucky he wore boots even though he wasn't riding today, probably saved him from any broken toes. I want you to be careful around this horse. We're being careful, we said. What's his name? The barn owner hesitated. This, he finally said, is Orlando. He was so white he made snow look dirty. He was taller than 2 of us stacked together. When his hooves hit the ground, there were tremors. When the breeze caught his mane, there was silk. He was well-bred, large-boned. He had flared nostrils and large shifting eyes. He could crush us with one hoof. He couldn't stop twitching. His teeth were bared. His shoulders were tense. He was ready. He was strained. He was powerful. He was nervous. Everything about him was contradictory except for this. All of our lives, we've ridden weary school ponies and tightly wound trained horses, and within seconds we knew. Orlando was the only thing that New Jersey had ever seen that was wild. What would it be like to ride him? Don't even think about it, the barn owner said. We wanted to pull Orlando's face to ours and see our own eyes reflected in them. We wanted to saddle and straddle him, hair and tail flowing out behind us as we galloped away. We wanted to kiss his chrome lips, his silver hooves. We wanted to be in love. We wanted to be the ones to break him. We wanted to be broken, heartbroken. We wanted to be chosen. We wanted to be wild. We won't touch him, we said. I'm not kidding. Wait until I'm done with him, the barn owner said. Like he had never even seen a horse story. Everyone knows how a horse story goes. Girl meets horse, girl loves horse, happily ever after. Usually there's some obstacles, but you can save yourself the trouble of watching Flicka and Felicity, an American Girl doll movie, and all 3 seasons of The Saddle Club, because we've seen them all, and we've read the books too. There is always a girl who is special. There is always a horse that recognizes her as such. Her father says absolutely not, but the horse is mysterious black, or copper like a penny, and she's never wanted anything this much. There's a fall, cue the broken bones, the bruises, a father's I told you so, but then the girl climbs back on the horse, and this time they win the race, and the crowd cheers, and they save their beloved small farm from bankruptcy, and they win the Olympic gold medal, and they finish first in the Derby, and the horse nestles his nose into the girl's palm, and they all ride off into the horizon. Of course, this is all a metaphor. The horse is the bad boy the dad doesn't approve of. The fall is a religious reference. The desire might be a coping mechanism for the missing mother, but we don't know because we haven't taken lit analysis yet. Some people will argue that horse stories aren't really about horses, that you could replace the stallion with a boy on a motorcycle and not much would change. Let's be clear. This is not that kind of horse story. We might not know that much about analysis, but we know in this one the horse is crucial. And we don't know that much about genre, but we know that people never know what to do with a real love story. Maybe you were only looking for metaphors because every love you've had required a pro and con list. Have you ever loved something purely? Have you ever loved something so much you would nail their old shoes up for luck? Our love is unbridled. Every horse story is about a heart that knows what it wants. Here is how this horse story goes. We were going to ride that horse. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. And as Heidi did note, please, the whole story is available in our next issue. Definitely encourage you to read it. Great, so now we'll move on to Kaylee. Kaylee Young-Eun Jeong is from Oregon. Her work can be found in Oli Poems, Shenandoah, Tinderbox Poetry Journal, and the Columbia Review, among others. She is a Wednesday's child.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and to the Adroit Journal for having me. Yeah, I'm just so honored to be reading with these amazing writers. And before I read, I wanted to take a brief moment to shout out an organization that I've been working with called Dahnun Mutual Aid. They're a group of organizers currently on the ground in Gaza providing life-sustaining aid to Palestinian families in the form of food, water, tents, and other important resources. So I will put their Venmo and PayPal information in the chat, as well as their Instagram handle, so you can get more information and documentation of their efforts. Okay. The first poem I'm going to read today is one of my 2 poems in this upcoming issue, and it's called Death with Dignity. We lived then in the first state to legalize physician-assisted suicide, and I remember watching the first person to use it on the news, the whole family singing "You Are My Sunshine," and thinking, as a child, there is a door out of this limited world we could open. Or if not a door, a human-sized hole we could cut into the barbed wire fence, like the one my father and I used to climb through to pick blackberries, which, when I asked him once whose berries they were, he said they belonged to us because we were brave enough to pick them, to come home bleeding everywhere for a sweetness we'd only briefly know as it disappeared into us. But what he really said, out loud I mean, was, "I don't think anyone cares." And even this he said in another language. He used to leave the house every night to stand in the front yard for hours, and I would stand at my bedroom window, watching him gaze into the empty street, imagining the sound of the sprinklers was really the sound of a distant ocean inside him, wanting to puncture him and see his real self pour out. To just ask him, for example, if he had ever been in love, and then disappear completely into whatever he dissolved into. I didn't realize if I understood him the way the body understands water by drowning, sweetness by eating, trespass by bleeding, It would leave me with nothing to want to understand. It takes a different kind of bravery to know hunger all your life. To allow whatever you want to destroy and let destroy you, the small dignity of solitude. I used to think the door would open onto a sunlight that would explain everything, but now I know light is not clarity. Light is light. My father is my father, irreducible and final, and not final. Maybe he had been in love, was still in love. Maybe I was crazy, his unhappiness only a bedtime story I told myself, because for whatever reason he couldn't seem to tell me anything, like the automatic transcriptions of voicemails he'd leave me, the Korean grocery lists forced into English nonsense, except for the endings, which would say, "Bye-bye, love you." But I did ask him once, years later, in Korea, by the river, under the light of stars, news of distant fires that had already ended long ago, to name the happiest time of his life. He said it was those years when we almost knew how to love each other. Of course, that's not what he said. He said those years in Oregon when you were so young. The next one I'm going to read is my other one in this upcoming issue of Adroit, and it's called Religion of Love. I thought I stopped believing in it when I was 5 and saw my parents hold each other's hands and stagger around the living room screaming. They tried to tell me later they had been dancing, but I knew what I saw. At 18, when I began to sleep with men for money, I remember looking at the flies in the hotel ceiling light and thinking I was just like them, trapped in what I died believing was the sun, and asking one of my regulars once if he could tell me about his wife. I thought if he just told me she was the love of his life, maybe the bed would catch fire and begin to speak in the voice of love itself and tell me to leave that room and follow it as its prophet forever. But when he did, the miracle was the restoration of sight. I saw myself as I was, not myself, but pleasure, a brief toll bridge out of the body, cars dropped off one by one into the river called shame. In the cab home that night, I thought about the people whose job it was to strip the bed after we had gone, to wash everything clean, and of my parents, how the broken dishes around them on the floor like huge petals were gone when I came downstairs the next morning, and how they were dancing in a way, and if I listened hard enough, I could almost hear the music they had been dancing to from a former paradise where they could still have anything they wanted. I didn't see them, but I knew it was there. It had to be. It was all there for us when we arrived. The little paper-wrapped soaps, the towels folded into swans again. If there's a religion of love, I think that's what it is. And I have one more that I wrote about a week ago. So it's pretty new, but I'm excited to read it. It's called Garage. One morning, my mother laid her body across the driveway to keep my father from backing out of the garage. Her plan was to see if his desire to leave their life could overcome any desire he had left not to harm her. Of course, it couldn't. I don't know if she believed this was love. I remember thinking as I watched from the doorway how her white shirt, grayed and yellowed by sweat and age, looked suddenly pure against the gravel in the blank morning, and how if it had all happened at night, it would have been easier somehow to bear. In the garage, a punch bag designed to resemble a man's upper body stuck on a pole. A red crate full of empty glass bottles still smelling of sweet, rancid wine. If shame is a place you step into sometimes to empty forgetfulness into yourself in secret, or try to empty yourself of violence like trying to empty a piano of its music, I understood both my mother wanting to stay and my father wanting to open its huge steel doors to leave for good. I understood whoever you choose to be in love, the mother or the father, it doesn't matter. You will find yourself in your front yard under the bright, wrong light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. They were dancing in a way. That was a really beautiful reading. And I'm not sure if you noticed in the chat, but again, to read any of these works that you've heard tonight in print, and some of them we just heard excerpts, so to hear them in their entirety, head over to Adroit, either via Instagram or just www.adroit.com on Thursday. The issue will be released then, and we can read all these great works. Our next reader is Juan Carlos Reyes. Juan Carlos Reyes' stories, poems, and essays have appeared in Florida Review, Wakama Journal, and Hawaii Review, among others. His debut fiction collection, 3 Alarm Fire, was released this month with Hinton Publishing. He has been the recipient of the Gar LaSalle Artist Trust Storyteller Award, a PEN USA Emerging Voices Fellowship, and a Jack Straw Writers Fellowship, among others. He received his MFA from the University of Alabama and has taught poetry and fiction with the Alabama Prison Arts and Education Project. He's a former board member of Seattle City of Literature and now serves as an associate professor of creative writing at Seattle University. Please join me in welcoming Juan Carlos.
Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for that introduction. I almost forgot how to read. It's been just such a pleasure listening to everybody. So thank you for letting me join you. The story I'm going to read, or the excerpt that I'm going to read that will fit the time, is the story that's going to be in this issue in a couple days. It's called Drown, and it is one of the short stories featured in this lovely thing, 3 Alarm Fire. So without further ado, this is Drown. This is all fiction, all short stories. So I just, I understand the world through fiction, through lies and make-believe. Okay, so this is Drown. My first mistake that night was to drive into the Holland Tunnel the wrong way. 10:34 p.m. should have made me think twice about that right turn. Not the time per se, just the general lateness. How overeager I was. How the steady traffic of trucks along the waterfront crossing the river to hit the interstate for a day's drive before sunrise made for the kind of barrier even a planet couldn't flip off. Not 100 feet from us, maybe not even 50, an oncoming truck blared its horn when it saw me. Its headlights gawking at us. Its cab might as well have been a sun aiming right for us. And I hit the brakes. Hard. Full stop. And then I shifted into reverse faster than someone's guts after a shot too much of whiskey. It's true what they say. You notice everything the moment you're near dying. We just crossed the threshold into the tunnel. The tone after the first few wall lights went from warm to cold. The double white lines looked like a fresh coat of paint. And the plumbing pipes running along opposing corners the length of the tunnel into Tribeca just seemed off. Not just that the copper pipes weren't even straight anymore, or the U-bolts that pinned them to the ceiling seemed like they'd started to sag, but also like someone had pinned them differently to their situations. One interconnected series of pipes looked like it hung inches further from its wall than the interconnected series of pipes along the opposite wall. I know it might be stupid to think about all that, to think that you remember all that, to think it matters to consider it now, but attention to that much detail makes you pause. Detail overdrive in one place, and like you run out of headspace to consider the details in some other place. Reversing, I pulled the steering wheel hard right, so much so that my left hand slipped, so much so that I had to swing hard back left to keep from crashing into or grazing the stone wall. I was lucky. We were lucky. There was a shoulder outside the mouth of the tunnel to just sit on and keep my foot off the pedal. That truck, though, it's honking like a bomb. The blast almost stopped my heart. Weird, though, too, that I felt like a hero right after feeling like a fool, saving us after almost killing us. Both feelings, I'd say, are as lies get. But let's rewind a minute, because it's not like I wasn't paying any attention. Selena and I had been on a date. Her skin and collar and hips and chest, you notice all these things at 17. We touched each other all over our bodies in the movie theater. We'd held hands walking out. We'd kissed too after dinner at the cheap Mediterranean place in the mall. and she'd taken her shoes off to touch toes under the table. I wore sandals because it was almost summer and my feet get so sweaty in shoes starting in like May. And I didn't want to go sloshing around everywhere while she looked good looking that good. And what else are we going to do after all that but drive? And maybe too long, too. Cruising past red lights and stop signs, under street lamps so bright that we might as well have been interrogated by police with the wheels rolling. We even coasted along downtown's empty buildings, through the strip of upscale hotels between downtown and the interstate. And I know what you're thinking, but we were kids. She was smart and horny, and I was smart and horny, and 17 is, in the end, just 17. And so we started playing with each other, just driving around. My free hand where she let it go, her busy hand where I needed it to go, and that's all we were doing. Pieces of us heating up and flaring big and just plain old wet in the most beautiful of ways. And sure, I was distracted. And maybe I wasn't paying any real attention. But yeah, I wasn't giving the road all my attention. And at that right turn, I didn't notice the no right turn sign. And right then, she pulled my hand somehow further into her and then squeezed my thigh. And she even rotated my fingertips in the thick of it. And I pressed in and up and high. And yes, I turned to read the expression on her face, in her eyes, to see what we'd managed to do together in the dark. And then just as soon as all that, nothing in front of us but bright and brightening lights shook me all kinds of loose. Something like an eternal horn blast. The oncoming truck and its turning engine wailing to keep from derailing everything. Us, it, the tunnel's exit mouth. But let's rewind a minute, because it's not like that night hadn't been building up in my head for a while. Selena and I had known each other a long time, since first year of high school. The teacher taking attendance and us two, one after the other, on the roll. And when I didn't initially answer to my name, I hadn't even heard it. She intuitively elbowed me from her desk across the aisle to ask if it had been me. And I answered in a daze. What? And then she said, I said, is the teacher calling your name? What do you mean? Is your name stupid or is your name Hector? It's Hector. Then stop being stupid and raise your hand, Hector. She straight up air quoted stupid, like she'd intended a capital S, some actual name against all will and reason. As far as I could tell, we'd hooked up with enough people over the 4 years that followed, and she had one serious relationship in that time, which I was never able to tell when it started. And I had one serious relationship in that time too, a relationship that ended in ways I can't even pinpoint. It just happened. I started calling that old girlfriend less. She started calling me less. And then I saw her kiss somebody else on the lips in the cafeteria as we all left lunch. And later on that same day, some senior pulled me into the girls' locker room to tell me that she'd heard all about our breakup, something even I hadn't heard about yet. And then she told me that our bodies could do the rest of the talking on a bench there. So yeah, I finally asked Selena out our last year in school, last month of the last semester. June can be a great time to ask somebody out. If it doesn't work out, hey, no worries. I've got college or work and they've got college or work and everybody's busy. If it doesn't not work out, then you spend the days counting the minutes in which you fear the other person might let you down or you might let the other person down. And every day gets warmer. Every day the temperature messes with your head. Not to mention, I was the oldest child in a family living in an apartment where somehow everybody was always too busy. Mom with work, dad with work, younger sister working to save money for her camping trip, little brother working to save money to travel with his soccer club. If there's one thing immigrants don't mind, it's putting their noses down and fearlessly driving into too much work. And eventually, you realize you've been no role model at all, like at all, or at least not like them. Nobody ever looked to me for advice. Nobody ever looked to me for help. And I might as well have accidentally made a wrong turn the wrong way into the Holland Tunnel because surviving meant at least I'd have a story to tell. Something like, if I have any advice for you, it's that you shouldn't be getting hot and heavy with a date in the car while you're driving around town. Or something like, at least wait until you're parked somewhere. When I asked Selena out, at first she hesitated. I didn't take it personally because it made sense. Because why would anyone say yes right away when your on and off lab partner of a few years in high school asks you out? Really, all we'd done together is dissect a frog, observed amoeba under a microscope, made printing errors with our analysis reports, paid too much money for a trifold cardboard, and repeat the cycle. And we weren't even in the same room writing the reports we submitted. Digital life. It's valuable for precisely what it should be valued for, attraction at a distance. I'll end the excerpt of the story there because my 8 minutes are up, but thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Juan Carlos. And then I see your book behind you is the story from this collection here. Okay, so we know where to find it. It's 3 Alarm Fire. Great, so our next reader is Emily Jungmin Yoon, and we're so happy to have you. Emily Jungmin Yoon is the author of, oh wait, a new book I don't have on here, hold on. Just as of this month is the author of Find Me as the Creature I Am, which came out on the 22nd. I was trying to find the publisher too. Well, I'm sure. Oh, it's it's Penguin Random House. Find Me as the Creature I Am, and the author of Ordinary Misfortunes and A Cruelty Special to Our Species, a finalist for the 2020 Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Yoon is the recipient of awards and fellowships from the Poetry Foundation, Breadloaf Writers Conference, and Plowshares. And her work has appeared in The New Yorker, Poetry, the New York Times Magazine, the Paris Review, and the Siwani Review. Yoon is the poetry editor for The Margins, the literary magazine of the Asian American Writers Workshop. And she is the assistant professor of Korean literature at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She splits her time between Honolulu and South Korea. Please join me in welcoming Emily.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I just saw that Juan Carlos, your book was also published on October 22nd. So our books were born on the same day. Happy 1 week anniversary. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to share my poem called Gray Areas, which will be published in Adroit on Thursday. Gray Areas. I want nothing to change, then wait for my life to change. I move through gravel and mud and arrive at the falls. Unfattened yet by rain, the water twists its thin body over heathered rock. I do not have a say in this. Neither tourist nor local on this land, I wonder at the beauty of this land and wonder what the beauty of this land has to do with me. It took me years to commit to the page, my own history, and so I wonder how to write into my poem, that palm shading my house, that mother cardinal feeding her young, who appears bigger than her with his trailing puffiness, whose brown head will soon burn red, just like hers. That Jackson's chameleon in the cloud forest, swaying as he walks, copying leaves in the wind, his globular eye turning and turning. That poison dart frog who has no poison because of the diet here. That snail and that toad sitting together in the rain, discussing a secret, without questioning their origins and place. What do I have to do with this place? It's true, even love has tired me before, a tire I must pull through mud, water, sand. I do not want to be strong. I want to lie down, in the water, in the mud, in the sand. I appeal to the ocean to release me of this fatigue. I am holding on too much, too many, the ocean says, pushing me out onto sand, onto land where I splay my burning body. Into the ocean, 2 million tires pour out. Off the coast of Florida, with the blessing of the US Army, to create a marine habitat. A gold tire is dropped from a blimp to christen this new cradle. The tires breaking loose and pummeled by hurricanes and tropical storms, choke corals, tumble onto sand. Grief already too heavy a carriage to cradle reef. I want my life to be a poem. I want my life to be a poem. The future of a poem is mystery. Writing toward uncertainty, I locate beauty. In this process, I harvest joy. Heavy rain floods Korea. Heavy rain floods Libya. Heavy rain floods Pakistan. Watching the thin body of the polar bear on the thin body of ice, the camera says, we can't interfere with nature. Let it starve, let it starve, let it starve. In the gray flood, the brown cow swims for the first time. Atop the asphalt, the escaped zebra runs for the first time. The pearl stomach of the beached marlin touches sand for the first time. It is too dangerous to release a marlin into an ocean filled with tourists. Under harvest on the NOAA Fisheries website, it says, blue marlin are a favorite target for recreational fishermen, as the fish tend to put up an incredible fight when hooked. The kingdom in which I find myself feeds me, and loving it is at once easy and complicated. Between wanting nothing and everything, I lie in the sand. I stand from water. In this process, I harvest. So the marlin part, I saw on the local news, I think last year, a marlin beached itself in Waikiki. And they couldn't release it back into the ocean because it would be too dangerous for the people in the water. Which I don't know, for some reason, it broke my heart for many reasons. But I think at the end, some local boys took it to eat it. So I guess it has somewhat of a happy ending for some people. I'm going to read one more poem. It's called Evolution. And both of these poems are in my new book, Find Me as a Creature I Am. Evolution. I look for uncomplicated peace in ocean and sand, afraid of the kind of candor you draw from me, my cowardly deep sea regime. With easy honesty, I make utterances ugly and necessary to my being, a kind of nakedness I never attempted in the privacy of myself. Looking at your back darkened by the sun, faithfully pouring into the water in front of us, I think desire is the wrong word, and love too plain, devotion too sacred. My whole life, I think, I will use for describing you. What do I know outside of words, which despite their history and combinations are too few and short for this life? I don't know if I want heaven, but I know I want to be where you go, in sand, water, every possible animal form. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sure literally no one wanted you to stop. So that's last poem was from Emily's new book, Find Me as the Creature I Am. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And before I move on to our final two readers, I'd like you to please help me congratulate them in the chat if you can, because they are our winners of our Adroit prizes. And the Adroit prizes honor a poem and a piece of prose from a student from either high school or college. And the competition's pretty tough. We pick packets, one packet for each genre. So there's a lot of kids submitting, and this poet and this writer who we're going to read now really exemplify, I think, the best talent among young folks that we've seen in our slush pile here. So the judges this year, to make it even more exciting for them, were Ocean Vuong and Kaveh Akbar for poetry and prose respectively. So truly it was an honor for these two to win the Adroit prizes this year. So without further ado, I will introduce our fiction writer first, Rosie Hong. Rosie Hong, Adroit's 2024 Prose Prize recipient, is a writer from Houston, Texas, a Young Arts winner with distinction and Scholastic Gold Medalist. Her work is published or forthcoming in Rust and Moth, Eucalyptus Lit, and others. She serves as an editor-in-chief for Fleeting Days magazine. So congratulations, Rosie.
Thank you. I just wanted to first say how honored and shocked I am for this opportunity to share my work alongside all these lovely writers. I feel so inspired right now. I feel so honored to share an excerpt from a piece that will be published in issue 1, and it's titled Paperboy. During the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the Supreme Court restricted Chinese immigration, ruling an exception that children of U.S. citizens could legally immigrate. The Chinese took advantage of this loophole by creating paper families. They built kinships with U.S. citizens by forging paperwork and splitting apart families. When inspectors caught on, they interrogated and dug into these immigrants' livelihoods. Chinese immigrants pushed for their false identity until they blurred their own truths with lies. 2 summers ago, Jie and I ran out to the fields every night and picked a few of Ma's peaches off her tree. We flattened the crabgrass growing under, nestled our back against the trunk, split overripe peaches with our thumbs. And Ma says she'll candy them for winter. Jie nudged me one night and pointed above. The peach tree was barren only after a week of our secret trips, its branches fanned out like veins, bleeding into the naked sky. Just tell her it was the birds, I laughed, digging thumb-sized holes near the tree trunk. When we first took peaches from Ma's tree, I had to tell Jie to stop worrying the whole way back. Just plant all the ones we stole. I bet at least one of them will grow. And if it does, I reminded her, nestling the pit in the dirt, I bet we'll repay her with twice the amount of peaches. This was the only story Ba would tell me before he left. How planting peach pits was like moving to America. Some molded while others sprouted. He wasn't the best with metaphors, but at least they made us feel less guilty stealing Ma's peaches. And when will that happen? Jie shook her head at the familiar excuse and threw her peach pit into the tall grass. I don't know, I told her. Maybe next year? Maybe we can do this next summer, Jie. Moonlight spilled over Jie's face, sticky from the juice dribbling down her cheek. She curled her body and cracked a thin smile. Maybe, Jie said, her syllables curdled from mouthfuls of fruit. Maybe if the peaches grow back. Jie's warnings of my overly ambitious peach plan were right all along. The next morning after that night, Ma found out about our crimes. I confessed on the porch with my hands splayed out, sticky and raw from the remains of her obliterated fruit. I promised her that all the pits I planted in her barren tree's place would repay her with bucketfuls of peaches, yellow-bellied and ripe. But those lies were fruitless, because 2 summers later, none of the pits sprouted, and Ma's tree stopped bearing fruit. You're lucky I had enough savings, Ma spat at her half-empty shelves of candied fruit. She dug into the wooden drawer and pulled out a stack of crinkled yuan. Was for your Ba. It was the same stack of yuan Ba refused before he left, pushing it away and stuffing documents in his duffel bag. This for him, that for him, always for him, for you. Ma slammed the yuan on the desk. That's what your Ba would say, last thing he said. Ever since Ba was swept up by sea a decade ago, I often heard his name in rumors amongst the neighboring Ayi. I was 5 at that time, clinging onto the hem of Ma's blouse, counting baskets of white chrysanthemums littered on the doorstep, watching the Ayi crowd around Ma. Ma refused to tell me about their bickerings, but a few weeks later, I found newspapers crumpled around those dry chrysanthemums. I was unfamiliar with most of the characters, only searching for Ba's whereabouts by carving my nail around the same word: ship, 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 sunk. An overturned boat, Ma heard from the Ayi. Despite his rumored death, Ma maintained that Ba was the first in our village to successfully immigrate to America. With his fishmonger spirit, he followed the path of a friend he often met out at sea fishing. A few months after the rumors died down, Ma received a letter from that friend in America who took pity and made room to take me into his family if Ma paid for the documentation. At that time, I was too young to deny anything, so Ma secretly racked up all the money she saved from selling stone fruit at the market to buy papers and documents. Your paper Ba. His name is Charles Yang, Ma whispered when she had first revealed her plans. She described how this crime was every mother's dream, how all the Ayi she knew risked their lives with forged documents and sacrificed their motherhood to watch their sons thin to paper. America, she interrupted every time I argued that it was a waste of money, is a place where the supermarkets have roofs and you can buy all the fruit you want in refrigerated carts. She heard this from the neighboring Ayi, who always bragged about sending their prosperous sons to America, paper sons who abandoned their homeland to watch crinkled yuan harden to gold. And these, Ma handed over an album of her and Ba before I was born, in case you forget his face and you see him there. Most of them were photos of Ba by the fruit stand, but a few were his boat trips with Ma when they were newlyweds. He always bragged about how chubby he was to the other fishmongers. He said it meant he could put enough fish on the table, Ma joked. Her stories about her early days with Ba strung into a lullaby. But Charles first, she stopped humming. Memorize those photos I paid half our savings for. That night, Ma unfolded another photo of a man who looked nothing like Jie and I's chubby-faced Ba. His teeth were straight and pearly white, hair parted and combed and gelled, cheekbones digging into his expressionless face. Your paper Ba, Ma nudged me. Charles Yang. She unwound a manila folder with more information of Charles, his birth date, daughters who were my paper sisters, wife who was my paper mother, deceased brother who was my paper uncle. I think it was by the harbor, his village, Ma told me, and she handed me a new pile of envelopes. Before you leave, memorize the map. 2 houses right from the entrance of the harbor. This layout. Describe it. How the beds were arranged. The view on each window. She tucked crinkled yuan in my pocket. Exchange this when you cross the border. Ma always added the word paper to everything, as if to remind me that even across oceans, I was always her son, conceived by the fruit stand when I kicked and turned until Ma's belly swelled red and raw like a peach. That her motherhood could not be stripped across oceans, that our bloodline was thicker than the loose-leafed papers we forged. That night, I sat next to Jie, and we taped the man's photo besides photos of Ba, and invented all the things we thought we knew about this man named Charles, his family, his village, or anything I could use to weave into a lie. From then on, I became the son of a man named Charles Yang. I spent every night reciting his name. Charles, I mouthed, stretching the syllables until my lips cracked. Charles, Charles. My tongue hardened with every call. What if he looks like Ba? What if he is Ba? What would I say? I would redraw the man's face in my dreams, trying to connect them to Ba's photos and the stories of his passing the Ayi always gossiped about. How Ba's boat was caught in a wave, salt-slicked waters swallowing everything whole. I imagined Ba re-emerging out of the waters and Americanizing into the man named Charles Yang. I imagined all the things I would say to him if we reunited. all the water-gurgling shouts and choking debris I would swallow to see him again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that reading. Yes, I just saw someone say breathtaking in the comments. That's true. Absolutely breathtaking. So we're going to close tonight with our poet who won an Adroit Prize. This is Melanie Zhou is going to read. She's a freshman, right, in college. Not at the time of submission, though. This is your first semester in college, I think. So Melanie is the 2024 Poetry Prize recipient. She studies computer science and poetry at Stanford University. She was a Stanford Levinthal tutorial scholar and a recipient of the New York State Summer Writers Institute Scholarship. So please join me in congratulating our last reader of the night, Melanie.
Thank you all so much. And thank you so much, The Adroit, for having me here today. It's such an honor to read among such wonderful writers. And it's quite beautiful to watch the day change and all of our Zoom boxes together and to celebrate art this evening. So I'm going to read 5 pieces for you today, beginning with the piece that was lucky enough to be selected for this year's prize. Old Friend. It is Lunar New Year, and we touch shoulders on the checkered lawn chair while our mothers gossip in a language we don't fully understand. They gather the flesh under our arms, tuck our silk tabbies into their laps, and call us big-boned American girls. A white streak, some rabbit, darts over the garden, and we jump from our mothers into the feathered grass. Our fathers leave the folding table, bend over the earth, and trap the poor thing with an oily peanut sack. Play after dinner, they tell us. We eat like sisters, trading morsels plate to plate, our laughters like milk pails clanging as our parents swap stories until their dregs of tea have dried. When I think of you, I think of that night. The sandal-shaped yard, chive and ginseng on the grill, and the rabbit's red eyes when we finally opened the bag. The second piece I will be reading is entitled, You Asked Me Where We Come From, and this is about my family history. So thank you to my parents for tuning in today. I was born among zippered bodies and hidden between my mother's long sleeves before she flung herself into the Yangtze River. When the communists knocked, we pulled wheelbarrows through the field. Revolution is not a dinner party. My father hacked the dirt and the trees, surrendered his sons for his cup of soup, his spoon of rice. When he died, I stowed his bones like watermelon seeds under the moor. I was a trembling dog. I was rushing yellow silt, and I freed myself for you. My memory curls like burning incense. Sometimes I can't remember my mother's face or the shape your lips should take to say Izang. Italy. My lover visits me in Florence. Morning fades like Masaccio's fresco from the balcony. We loiter in a cafe by the dome. He studies my face and says I look sensitive in the light. 14th century brick dries outside after midday rain, and the smell of bay laurel meanders around our corner. Earlier, we discussed how hard it is starting as lovers. The waiter asks for our second order in Italian. Avete già deciso? He'll choose. During the war, they entombed David to protect him from bombing. We walk toward the bridge, following some American voice in the crowd. And the next 2 pieces I will be reading are new work, so bear with me as I share it with you tonight. Syrinx. It is an act of appraisal, I say, about the gray canvasbacks on Lake Merritt, how their necks slope in pairs while diving for scraps. Thumbing my palm, you tell me I am kinder than my profile, and I feel nervous recounting your face. The room smells when our hungers seal together. Forming a raft, The birds shelter each other while sleeping. In the morning, I rifle for socks and leave coffee on the dresser. You text me a picture of muddy water. And to close us out, I'm going to be sharing a poem about a fun job I had in college. Campus job. I helped a famous hypnotherapist make a mobile app. Each screen was coral pink and letterpressed in beige, some metaphor about the mind unspooling in its box. I was doubtful at first, imagined men on stage, drunk, barking like dogs, but I met real patients who reported clenching their consciousness and opening their palms to silk. We named the app Lionel after the user who died alone in Spain. When I can't sleep, I sink into a tub and initialize the screen. Lionel, welcome to an exercise designed to separate your worries. Me, how is that possible? Lionel, think of relief and follow your body there. Thank you all so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Melanie. I have 2 quick encouragements before we go. Before that, thank you again so much for all coming and enjoying the written word and the spoken word together tonight. 2 encouragements. Please, on Thursday, check out the issue in its entirety on Adroit's website. It should be posted on all the socials too, if that's an easier way to get there. And then, of course, please remember to vote. Election day is coming up. Just get out there if you can, please. Okay. Again, have a good night, everyone. And thank you so, so much to our readers and to the staff of Adroit.